Welcome to Engage Math, Lesson 32, Problem 2. So we are solving quadratic equations by a process called completing the square. Sometimes it's hard to remember all the steps, so I took the liberty of writing them at the top, and we'll follow those steps for the first problem, 2a, and then we'll just kind of move along as if we don't even need to look back at the steps. But you know you can always look back if you get stuck. Okay, so let's look at 2a. And we're going to follow the steps. The first one being rewrite with C on the right. Well, the nice news is that C is already on the right for us, but I'm still going to rewrite it. And I am going to say plus dash, because we're going to have to add in these numbers in step 2. Now, what I mean by C, by the way, is the constant term, the number without the variable. So now we have that on the right, and we have everything else written really well. So step 2, we're going to take half of B. B is 8. So half of that is 4. So half of B is 4, and 4 squared gives us 16. That's the magical number that we add into both of our spaces. Okay, so now it's step 3 says factor the left as the square root of something. I'm sorry, as a quantity squared, excuse me. So we now can know that the left-hand side can be written as some quantity squared, which in this case is going to be w plus 4, the quantity squared, because w plus 4 times w plus 4 would multiply out to be w squared plus 8w plus 16. So we haven't changed anything, and that's going to be equal to 4. So now the reason you might be thinking, well, how, we were just lucky this time that we could somehow factor w squared plus 8w plus 16 as a quantity squared like step 3 tells us to do. But actually, it will always work that way if you do step 2 correctly, because you came up with the magic number of 16 that makes that happen. So now we're going to take the square root of both sides. I'm going to change the color just so you can kind of see where we're going with that. And we now have the square root of w plus 4 squared, which is just w plus 4. And don't forget your plus or minus equals plus or minus 2. So then we have w plus 4 equals 2, which gives us w equals negative 2 as one of our answers. And then the other answer would be w plus 4 equals negative 2, which gives us w equals negative 6 as our other answer. And we have solved this quadratic equation to find out that the answers are negative 6 and negative 2. All right, let's move along to B. And now I'm going to zoom in a lot so we have plenty of room to see this. And we're not going to look back at the steps unless you feel like you need to, no problem. So we're going to rewrite it with C on the right-hand side. So when we move the C over, it becomes a negative 6. And so we have plus dash, plus dash. We take half of B, which is 6. We square it, which is 36, and we add it to both sides. So we've added 36 to both sides, and now this quantity is going to factor as x plus 6, the quantity squared, equals 30. Now I'm going to change our color again so you can see that I'm taking the square root of both sides, and we get x plus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 30. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. So our final answer is going to be x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 30. And that is all we can do. All right, let's look ahead to C. Okay, so for part C, I'm going to zoom in again. We're going to start by rewriting it. The C, by the way, is already on the right-hand side, the constant term. So it was negative 12 when it was on the left, but it's already been moved to the right as a positive 12. We can divide everything through by 3 to make our lives a lot easier. So our new equation will be x squared minus 3x equals 4. And I'm going to leave room for our plus dash, plus dash. All right, so taking half of negative 3, so I'm going to write that right here. It's negative 3 over 2. So that's how we take half of it and we square it. So that gives us a 9/4. So I'm actually going to use that line that I had for the dash as a fraction line, and I'm going to add 9/4 to the left and to the right. Okay, guaranteed that you can now factor this. If you're not sure how to, you know you need an x in the first position to get x squared, and the last two, like whatever you put in this position, has to multiply by itself to give us a positive 9/4. So 3/2 would work, and the reason we know it's minus is because negative 3/2 plus negative 3/2 adds to negative 3 and multiplies to a positive 9/4. So that's going to be equal to 4 plus 9 fourths. So I want you to think of 4 as 16 fourths because we need a common denominator. And so it's 16 fourths plus 9 fourths. And I'm just going to take two steps at once here. Once you think of 4 as 16 fourths, you can add those two fractions together because they have a common denominator. But I'm going to take the liberty of just writing it as 25 fourths because 16 plus 9 is 25. So we have 25 fourths. Okay, I just want to make sure you know this was just our scratch work. It doesn't have anything to do with the left-hand side of the equation. All right, we're now going to take the square root of both sides. So what we get is x minus 3 halves equals, let's not forget that plus or minus the square root of 25 fourths, which is 5 halves. So now we have x equals, we're going to add the 3 halves to both sides. X equals 3 halves, positive 3 halves when you move it to the right because you're adding it to both sides, plus or minus 5 halves. So we're going to get two solutions here. So the first is going to be 3 halves plus 5 halves, which is going to be 8 halves, which is 4. The other is going to be 3 halves minus 5 halves, which is going to be negative 2 halves, which is equal to negative 1. So our two answers are x equals 4 and x equals negative 1. All right, let's move on to D. We actually had a lot more space there because we zoomed in so much. Okay, D is a light bulb problem, but the best thing to do is to start by eliminating the fractions. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation through by the least common denominator of 4. So when we do that, we're going to get just plain old y squared plus 2y, because 4 times 1/2 is 2, minus 7 equals 0. So now we're going to start our steps. Y squared plus 2y, we're going to move the negative 7 over, making it a positive 7. I'm going to kind of add in our plus dash, and half of 2. So we're going to take half of 2, which is 1, squared is 1. So I'm going to add 1 here and 1 there. So now on the left, we're guaranteed that we have something that factors. In this case, sorry, it's not y squared, it's just y plus 1, the quantity squared, equals 8. Take the square root of both sides, and we're going to get y plus 1 equals the square root of 8. Off to the side here, I'm just going to remind you that we know how to find the square root of 8 as 4 and 2, 2 and 2. We have a pair, so the square root of 8 can be written, sorry, forgot the plus or minus there. Let's put that plus or minus in. So y plus 1 equals plus or minus 2 root 2. And so we end up with a final answer of y equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 square root 2. That's our final answer. Great. I'm going to zoom in so you can see all the answers on one page, and we'll see you next time at Engaged Math.